Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wassalatu wassalam ala Imam al-Anbiya wal Mursaleen Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een amma ba'd. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to this another of our sittings. Today we'll be taking a look at the topic Tafseer Surah Ahzab, the marriage of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to ZAYNAB bint JAHSH. ZAYNAB, Z-A-Y-N-A-B. Z-A-Y-N-A-B. Today's topic, the marriage of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to ZAYNAB bint JAHSH. Now, today's topic has two stories. And the first story is about Julaybib. Z-A-Y-N-A-B. Zaynab. Z-A-Y-N-A-B. The first story is about Julaybib. Now, let us take a look at the first ayah that we are going to explain, which is ayah 36. Now, please post the ayah again. Allah Ta'ala said, the first story is about Julaybib, J-U-L-A-I-B-I-B. Julaybib, J-U-L-A-I, Julaybib. Now, please post the hadith about Julaybib. Now, Julaybib was a companion of the Prophet with a hunchback, and people think he was ugly. Beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. Beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. The ayah has to be in green. You have to post the ayahs. Now the ayah has to be in green. We need somebody else to post the current verses in green, not in black. If we have no one to post the current verse, we have to cancel the dars. Julaybib was a Sahaba who people considered to be ugly, and the people of Medina used to say, I will marry my daughter to anyone except Julaybib because he is not handsome. And the Prophet loved Julaybib because he was a fierce fighter on the battlefield. He was brave. He was a lion on the battlefield. And he had needs like everyone else. Physical needs, emotional needs, spiritual needs. So the Prophet made it his duty to find Julaybib a wife. So the Prophet went to the house of one of the Ansars and said, I come to propose marriage. And the husband was happy. The Prophet came to propose marriage. But the Prophet said, it's not what you're thinking, it's not for me, it's for Julaybib. The husband said, I need to ask my wife about this one. I need to consult with my wife about this one because it's for Julaybib. When the man said to the wife, the Prophet came to propose marriage, the wife was very happy. The husband said, it's not for the Prophet, it's for Julaybib. And then the wife said, no, I will never marry my daughter to him. The girl overheard the conversation, and the girl said, how can you turn down the proposal of the Prophet? So the girl objected, and the parents they gave in. So when the parents objected to the proposal of the Prophet, it's for this reason Allah revealed Surah Ahzab verse 36. وَمَا كَانَ لِمُؤْمِنٍ وَلَا مُؤْمِنَةٍ إِذَا قَضَى اللَّهُ وَرَسُولُهُ أَمْرًا أَنْ يَكُنْ لَهُمْ الْخِيَرَةُ مِنْ أَمْرِهِمْ. It is not befitting of the believing man or the believing woman that when Allah and His Messenger has decreed a matter, Surah 33 verse 36, it is not befitting of the believing man or the believing woman that whenever Allah and His Messenger should decree a matter, that they should have any opinion, any option in their decision. And whosoever disobeys Allah and His Messenger, he has indeed strayed into a plain error. So this is called Asbab an-Nuzul, causes of revelation. The marriage took place between the girl and Julaybib, and it was a successful marriage. And they went to the battlefield, and Julaybib ran out of the house to go and fight. The Sahabas were victorious, and they said, the Prophet said, do you miss anyone? And the Sahaba said, no, we don't miss anyone. And the Prophet said, what about Julaybib? The Prophet missed him. The Prophet went and searched on the battlefield for Julaybib, and he found him between 7 kuffar. He killed 7 kuffar until he himself got killed. And the Prophet took him up, and he wasn't washed, he was buried. And 7 angels were, the angels came and washed Julaybib. So when they asked his wife, why is it so? She said, we had intimacy, and he dashed out of the house without making ghusl when he heard the call for jihad. We had intimacy, and he didn't wash, he didn't make ghusl. He dashed out of the house when he heard the call for jihad, and he participated in the jihad without ghusl. This is the reason why the angels washed him. You are not supposed to wash the shuhada. You bury them the way they die, and you don't take off their clothing. You bury them in the same clothing with the blood on it, and you don't wash them. This is the Islamic law in regards to the shuhada. And you don't pray janazah over shuhada. You don't pray salatul janazah over shuhada. You don't wash them, and you don't clothe them. You bury them in the same clothing they die in. There are lessons to be learned from the story of Julaybib. Okay, the next chapter, lessons from the story of Julaybib. After I've given you the cause of revelation, the next chapter, lessons from the story of Julaybib. Lessons from the story of Julaybib. The first lesson is lessons from the story of Julaybib. The first lesson is that beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. You might think a person is ugly, but a woman doesn't find him ugly. That's your opinion that the person is ugly. And you're not allowed to call Allah's creation ugly. Some people call the monkey ugly. Who told you you can call Allah's creation ugly? Some people call the monkey ugly. And the reason why they call the monkey ugly is because they compare the monkey to man. And then they oppress the monkey by calling the monkey ugly. That's what they do. They do qiyas. They do qiyas. They compare the monkey to man. And then they arrive at the conclusion, oh, the monkey is ugly. That is oppressing the monkey. In his community, he's not considered ugly. In his community, he's not considered ugly. Now, the second lesson you learn from the story of Julaybib is taqwa overrides everything else. Because Julaybib was known for his taqwa and his bravery on the battlefield, the girl paid attention to his taqwa and accepted the proposal. Julaybib was known for being pious. Well, he was jovial as well. He used to make people laugh. He was jovial. He used to make people laugh. He had a sense of humor. But he was also famous in Medina for his taqwa and his bravery on the battlefield. He was a lion on the battlefield. The girl who accepted his proposal, she paid attention to these attributes and did not pay attention to what the other people were paying attention to. Good looks, good looks. The third lesson you learn is that good looks is not everything. A man can be handsome, but at the same time he can be evil. Many handsome men are gays. The third lesson, good looks is not everything. Taqwa is everything, not good looks. Many men have good looks, but they're homosexuals. Or many men have good looks, but they're atheists. Many men who have good looks, they have a wife and 10 girlfriends. Some men with good looks have a wife and 10 girlfriends. In the West, people pay attention to good looks and money. They are very shallow. The girl who accepted the proposal of Julaybib, the girl who accepted the proposal of the Prophet for Julaybib, she was not shallow. The girl accepted the proposal of that shallow. When you have taqwa, it prevents you from being shallow. When a person has taqwa, the taqwa prevents them from being shallow. But if you don't have any taqwa, you are very shallow. Why the kuffar pay attention to skin color and the type of passport you have and how much money you have? The kafirs pay attention to race and nationality and wealth. Because a kafir is very, very shallow, because a kafir has no taqwa. And because they have no taqwa and they are evil, they are very, very shallow. Nationality, wealth, and good looks because kafirs are shallow. The other lesson you learn from the story of Julaybib is that sometimes children have more taqwa than their parents. Because the parents objected to the proposal, and the girl said, how can you object to the proposal of the Prophet? On many occasions, you see kids have more taqwa than their parents. Because the girl accepted the proposal of Julaybib and the mother was against it. In the UK, they did a documentary and they said the Muslim children in the UK have more taqwa than their parents. In the UK, the kuffar did a research, and the kuffar said in the UK, the Muslim children have more taqwa than their parents. The Muslim children, they are the ones who are making hijrah to the Dawla. And the parents come on TV crying, oh, come back, come back. The children make hijrah to Dawla, and the parents, they come on TV crying. Because in the UK, the Muslim parents, they are not pious like their children. Even the kuffar said the children are more religious than their parents in the UK. The parents came on TV crying for the children to come back. These children, when they made hijrah to Dawla, they didn't tell their parents they were making hijrah because the parents can't cope with hijrah. The Muslim parents in the UK, they don't like hijrah and jihad and khilafah. Most of them are hypocrites. Most of them are hypocrites who reject the Dawla. The other lesson you learn is that the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam paid attention to the affairs of his Sahabas. The Prophet, the fifth lesson, the Prophet paid attention to the affairs of his companions. He knew who was single, he knew who was married, he knew who was desperately in need of a wife, he knew who was brave on the battlefield, he knew who was a coward, he knew who was a hypocrite, he knew who was sincere. The Prophet paid keen attention to the affairs of the Ummah, and this is called fiqh al-waqi'. To pay attention to the affairs of the Ummah is called fiqh al-waqi'. F-I-Q-H-U-L. Fiqh al-waqi'. And the Prophet said in a hadith, anyone who doesn't pay attention to the affairs of the Muslims, he is not one of us. The Prophet himself said it. If you start your day without caring about Allah, Allah doesn't care about you, and the one who doesn't care about the affairs of the Ummah, that person is not one of us. I think the hadith was collected by Ahmad ibn Hanbal, or the Mustadrak of Al-Hakim. I heard this hadith some 20 years ago in university. It was narrated by Abdullah ibn Masud, the Prophet says, whoever starts his day caring about something other than Allah has nothing to do with Allah, and whoever does not care about the Muslims is not one of them. Okay. Found in the Mustadrak of Al-Hakim. So because the Prophet cared about his Ummah, he knew who was in need of a wife, and he used to arrange marriages for his companions. The other lesson you learn is that the Prophet loved Julaybib, because the Prophet said, Julaybib is of me and I am of Julaybib. The Prophet used to say, Julaybib is of me and I am of Julaybib. The seventh lesson you learn is this girl, when she became a widow, the wife of Julaybib, when she became a widow, the Prophet used to say, Julaybib is of me and I am of Julaybib. Okay, thank you. This girl, when she became a widow, she was the most sought after girl in Medina to marry. When she became a widow. So the marriage to Julaybib elevated her status. Some people said, oh, Julaybib, he's ugly. People used to say that. But her marriage to Julaybib elevated her status. Because when she became a widow, she was the most sought after girl in Medina. Everybody wanted to marry her. The widow of Julaybib. That's point number 7. Point number 7, the marriage to Julaybib elevated her status. The widow of Julaybib was the most sought after girl for marriage after he passed, because the marriage elevated her status. Because this marriage elevated her status in the society. The 8th lesson, the Prophet made a dua for this girl, and Allah answered the dua of the Prophet. Allahumma subba alayha khair wa subba la taj'al. The Prophet made a dua for this girl, the wife of Julaybib, and Allah answered the dua. The dua says, "O Allah, pour on her all goodness." The dua is, "O Allah, pour upon her all goodness." Allahumma subba alayha al khair sabba wala taj'al aishaha kadda. Oh, the dua, pour on her all goodness and don't make her life difficult. Pour on her all goodness and don't make her life difficult. Wala taj'al aishaha kadda. The ayah also means that we should surrender to the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The ayah also means that as Muslims we should surrender to the decisions of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And when you come into Islam, you should come wholeheartedly. When you come over into Islam, you should come over into Islam wholeheartedly. Like Allah told you in Baqarah 208, when you come to Islam, come into Islam wholeheartedly. الذين آمنوا ادخلوا في السلم كافة. Or you believe, enter into Islam wholeheartedly and do not follow the footsteps of the shaitan. Baqarah 208, Sahih International if it's possible. Or you who believe, oh yeah, that's it. Or you who believe, enter perfectly in Islam by obeying all the rules and regulations. Okay, thank you. This is good enough. This translation is good enough. Now, I have extracted all the lessons from the story of Julaybib, so with that I will go to the second ayah, which is ayah 37, Surah Ahzab, ayah 37. And remember when you said to him, Zayd ibn Haarithah, the freed slave of the Prophet, on whom Allah has bestowed grace by guiding him to Islam, and you, O Muhammad, too have done favor by setting him free. Keep your wife to yourself and fear Allah, but you did hide in yourself what Allah has already made known to you, that He will give her to you in marriage, that which Allah will make manifest. You did fear the people. You fear the criticism of the people, that the people will say Muhammad married the wife of his freed slave, whereas Allah had a better right, that it is Allah who you should fear. So when Zayd had accomplished his desire from her, which is to divorce her, we gave her to you in marriage, so that in the future there may be no difficulty to the believers in respect of the marriage of the wives of their adopted sons, when the latter have no desire to keep them anymore. They have divorced them. And Allah's command must be fulfilled. It has to be carried out. It has to be accomplished. Now, this is a well-known story the marriage of Zaynab bint Jahsh. The Prophet ﷺ had an adopted son called Zayd ibn Haarithah, and he treated him like his own flesh and blood. And people used to call him Zayd ibn Muhammad. Zayd ibn IBN, Zayd ibn Haarithah. Zayd ibn Haarithah, he was the adopted son of the Prophet, and the Prophet treated him like his own flesh and blood. He was a slave for Khadija, but the Prophet, when he married Khadija, he set him free. He used to be a slave of Khadija, but when the Prophet married Khadija, the Prophet gave him his freedom. And he treated him like his own flesh and blood, like a son. And the people of Mecca and Medina used to call him Zayd ibn Muhammad. Not Zayd ibn Haarithah, Zayd ibn Muhammad. Because the Prophet treated him like his flesh and blood. But Allah Ta'ala corrected the Prophet and told the Prophet to call them by their father's name. And Allah told the Prophet, your adopted son is not your biological son. Surah 33 verses 3 to 4. The Prophet was corrected by Allah and he said, your adopted son is not your biological son. Surah 33 verses 3 to 4. Sorry, 4 to 5. Surah 33 verse 4 to 5. I'm sorry. And your trust is in Allah. Okay, bring me 4 to 5. So when Allah said, call them by their father's name, the Prophet stopped calling him Zayd ibn Muhammad. Nor has he made your adopted sons like your biological sons. Look at the ayah. Nor has he made your adopted sons like your biological sons. Call them, the adopted son, by their father's name. Don't call your adopted son with your surname. Don't give them your surname. Call them by their father's name. So when Allah said that, call them by their father's name, the Prophet stopped calling him Zayd ibn Muhammad. And then the Prophet called him Zayd ibn Haarithah. The Prophet loved Zayd a lot. And he even loved his son Osama. And the love of the Prophet for Zayd and Osama was well known all over the Arabian Peninsula. Aisha said in a famous hadith, if Zayd was alive, he would become the caliph. Okay, find the hadith I've quoted. Aisha said it. The Prophet loved Zayd ibn Haarithah so much, if Zayd did not die at the Battle of Mu'tah, he would have become the caliph for the Muslims. That's how much the Prophet loved Zayd. So many of you will say the Prophet loved Abu Bakr, the Prophet loved Abu Bakr. Oh yes, the Prophet loved Abu Bakr. What about Zayd? Aisha said, if he was alive, if he did not die at the Battle of Mu'tah, he would have become the caliph for the Ummah. The Rasul ﷺ arranged a marriage between Zayd ibn Haarithah and ZAYNAB bint JAHSH. ZAYNAB bint JAHSH was the first cousin of the Prophet. Okay, thank you for the hadith. ZAYNAB bint JAHSH was the first cousin of the Prophet. His paternal aunt. ZAYNAB bint JAHSH was the daughter of his paternal aunt, a noble woman of Quraysh. And the Prophet arranged a marriage between ZAYNAB bint JAHSH and Zayd. But the family of ZAYNAB bint JAHSH wasn't keen on the marriage. Even her brother wasn't keen on the marriage. Her family wasn't keen on the marriage. ZAYNAB bint JAHSH, 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 the Prophet arranged a marriage to Zayd. The Prophet, ZAYNAB BINT JAHSH marriage was arranged to Zayd by the Prophet ﷺ, but her family wasn't keen on the marriage because she was a noble woman of Quraysh. Why they were not keen? They went along with the marriage reluctantly because it was arranged by the Prophet, but they weren't keen on the marriage. Why? Because he was a freed slave, not from Quraysh, a freed slave. She was a noble woman of Quraysh, and he was a freed slave. They went along with the marriage reluctantly because they thought she was getting married beneath her status. The family thought Zaynab was getting married beneath her status. The marriage lasted for ZAYNAB BINT JAHSH. They thought she was married below her status. Zaynab was the first cousin of the Prophet. I put that in the notes. She was the first cousin of the Prophet. ZAYNAB BINT JAHSH was the first cousin of the Prophet. The marriage lasted for 1 year until cracks started to show in the marriage. The marriage lasted for 1 year, and then cracks started to show in the marriage. Zayd came to the Prophet and started to complain about his wife. And the Prophet would say to Zayd, "Fear Allah and keep your wife." The Prophet always said to Zayd, "Fear Allah and keep your wife." Cracks started to appear in the marriage because they were not compatible. They had the same Aqidah, they worship the same God, they worship Allah, they have the same Prophet Muhammad, they had the same Aqidah, they pray to the same Qibla, the same. Many things were similar, but they were not compatible because Zaynab wanted to marry the Prophet. So a woman will never settle for second best. Her attitude is, why should I marry Zayd when I can marry the Prophet? That was her attitude. A woman will never settle for a second best if she can get the best. So Zaynab didn't even make an effort to try with the marriage. Zaynab didn't make any effort to try with the marriage. Zaynab went along with the marriage out of respect for the Prophet, but in her heart she wasn't with the marriage. She went along with the marriage out of respect for the Prophet, but in her heart she didn't want the marriage. So Allah Ta'ala revealed Surah Ahzab verse 37 to tell the Prophet the marriage is not going to work. And when Allah revealed Surah Ahzab verse 37 to tell the Prophet the marriage is not going to work. The marriage is not going to work. And when Zayd divorced her, I marry you to Zayn 7 heavens. This marriage is not going to work. Don't even try, it's not going to work. They're not compatible. Even though they belong to the same religion, they're not compatible. Because she thinks she married beneath her status. And when Zayd divorced her, I marry you, Allah, I marry you to Zaynab from above the 7 heavens. So that the Muslims will know that their adopted son is not their biological son. So they can marry the divorced wives or the widows of their adopted son. So that the Muslims will realize that their adopted son is not their biological son. Therefore, they can marry the widows of their adopted sons. Therefore, they can marry the widows of their adopted sons, or the divorced wives of their adopted sons, or the divorced wives of their adopted sons. There are many lessons from the story of ZAYNAB BINT JAHSH. Okay. in bold writing, lessons from the story of ZAYNAB BINT JAHSH and Zayd. The first lesson is Zayd was given high status in Islam in spite of being an ex-slave. Zayd was given a high status in Islam in spite of being an ex-slave. Number two, Zayd was given a high status in Islam in spite of being an ex-slave. Number two, Islam liberates slaves. And Bilal enjoyed this liberation. This liberation was enjoyed by Bilal, Salman Al Farisi, and Zayd ibn Haarithah. This liberation was enjoyed by Bilal. This liberation was enjoyed by Bilal, Salman Al Farisi, and Zayd. This liberation was enjoyed by Bilal, Salman Al Farisi, and Zayd. Okay, number three. The Rasul used to arrange marriages for his companions. The third lesson you learn from the story, the Rasul used to arrange marriages for his companions because he cared about their needs. Because he cared about their needs. Number four, not every arranged marriage is successful, even if it was arranged by a very pious person. Number four, not every arranged marriage is successful, even if it is arranged by a very pious person. Because you don't know if the two people will get on. Marriage is like taking a plane. The plane might arrive safely in the airport, or the plane might crash. I'm sure there's a plane which has over 200 people on board and they don't know where the plane is. A Malaysian plane. Till now they don't know where the plane is. Marriage is like taking a plane. The plane might arrive in the airport or it might crash. Your marriage might survive or it might crash. The fifth lesson is that cousins are allowed to marry in Islam. The fifth cousins are allowed to marry in Islam, even first cousins. Because Zaynab was the first cousin of the Prophet and the Prophet married her. Zaynab was the first cousin of the Prophet and he married her. Now the sixth lesson is, okay, bring the hadith that the Prophet married from Tabari. The Prophet married his cousin from the hadith of Tabari. The sixth lesson you learn is that it is unwise to marry beneath your status. It is unwise to marry below your status. Now Zaynab considered Zayd beneath her status and she thought she married beneath her status. So she wasn't happy in the marriage. According to Abu Hanifa and Imam Shafi and Ahmad ibn Hanbal, if your daughter graduated from Oxford or Cambridge, Harvard or Howard as a doctor, you cannot marry her to a janitor. A janitor is a man who works in the toilet to clean toilets. According to Abu Hanifa, Imam Shafi and Ahmad ibn Hanbal, if your daughter graduated from Oxford or Cambridge, Harvard or Howard as a doctor, for example, you cannot marry her to a janitor who cleans the toilet. According to, this is the madhab of Abu Hanifa, Imam Shafi and Ahmad. This is the madhab of Abu Hanifa, Shafi and Ahmad. However, Imam Malik said, I beg to differ. Imam Malik, he allows this marriage. The Maliki madhab allowed this marriage. The other three Imams, they don't allow the marriage. They think it is unwise. Now, Abu Hanifa is not saying if you marry your daughter to a janitor, the marriage is batil and she's committing zina. They didn't say that. What the Imams are saying, it is unwise. So don't think Abu Hanifa and Shafi and Ahmad is saying, if you marry your daughter who's a doctor to a janitor who cleans toilet, the marriage is batil and she's committing zina because there's no marriage. They didn't say that. The Imams didn't say that. What the Imams are saying, it is unwise to marry your daughter who's educated, a doctor, a graduate of Oxford or Cambridge Harvard or Howard, MIT, Yale, to a man who cleans the toilet. That's what they're saying. They're saying it is unwise. Imam Malik said, I beg to differ. And Imam Malik, he allowed this marriage. The conflict between Zayd and Zaynab bint Jahsh is that in her heart, she married beneath her status. That's why they couldn't get along. She married beneath her status. The seventh lesson is, your adopted son is not your biological son. Allah told you in Surah Nisa, verse 23. Your adopted son is not your biological son. So don't treat your adopted son like a biological son. Don't give him your name. And he can't inherit from you. You can let him inherit by way of wasiyah, a gift. But he can't inherit a fraction of your wealth as if to say he's your biological son. An adopted son is not a biological son. Allah said it in the Quran. So when the Prophet used to call Zayd ibn Muhammad, Allah told him, call them by their father's name. Why? Because the adopted son is not the biological son. So don't treat them the same way. The wives of your sons who spring from your own loins. That's your son. What Allah said, the wives of your sons who spring from your own loins. That's your son. That is your son, not your adopted son. Yeah, not every arranged marriage work. Okay, the next lesson we learn. Allah was the wali of Zaynab bint Jahsh. A girl needs a wali. Who was the wali of Zaynab bint Jahsh? Allah was her wali. And her witness was the angel Gabriel. Allah was the wali. The wives of your sons who spring from your loins is your son. Yes. Your son are only those who spring from your loins. The next lesson, Allah was the wali of Zaynab bint Jahsh, because this marriage took place from above the seven heavens. Allah was the wali of Zaynab bint Jahsh, because this marriage took place from above the seven heavens. Because this marriage took place from above the seven heavens. Okay, find the hadith where the Prophet said, Allah is the wali of Zaynab bint Jahsh. Allah gave her away in marriage as the wali. And who was the witness? The angel Gabriel was the witness. A very famous hadith. I'm sure you have heard this hadith before. Okay, thank you. We continue the dars. The other lesson we learn is, a section of the Quran was very difficult for the Prophet to practice. And that's lesson number 9. A section of the Holy Quran was very difficult for the Prophet to practice. To the extent where Aisha said, if the Prophet should hide any ayah from the Ummah, he would have hidden that ayah. Surah Ahzab, verse 37. Because the Prophet didn't want to marry Zaynab bint Jahsh. Okay, find the hadith where Aisha said, if the Prophet should hide any ayah from us, it would have been Surah Ahzab, verse 37, because the Prophet didn't want to marry Zaynab bint Jahsh, because he was afraid about the stigma. People are going to say, oh, look at Muhammad, he married the ex-wife of his son, his adopted son. The Prophet knew what people say. He didn't want to marry her. But the commandment of Allah has to be obeyed. The commandment of Allah has to be obeyed. Listen to what Aisha said. If Allah's apostle were to conceal anything of the Quran, he would have concealed that verse, this verse. Which verse? Surah Ahzab, verse 37. Even the Prophet ﷺ found a section of the whole Quran difficult to practice. Even the Rasul, in spite of being a prophet, he found a section of the Holy Quran difficult on him to practice. Aisha said, if the Prophet should have concealed anything from us, it would have been this ayah. Surah Ahzab, verse 37. The other lesson we learn is number 10. Lesson number 10. Women are competitive by nature. Women by nature are competitive. Because Zaynab used to boast in front of the other wives. You were given to the Prophet by your families in the dunya. I was given to the Prophet by Allah from above the 7 heavens. You were given to the Prophet by your families in the dunya. I was given to the Prophet by Allah from above the 7 heavens. Why she boasts in front of the other wives? Because women are competitive by nature. Bring the hadith. Zaynab used to boast, I was given to the Prophet by Allah from above the 7 heavens. Now Aisha could have said something similar. Aisha could have said, my innocence was revealed from above the 7 heavens as well. When they accused me of committing zina, my innocence came down from above the 7 heavens. Aisha could have said that. The other lesson we learn from this story is number 11. The ulama used the above hadith to say Allah is above the heavens and not everywhere. Lesson number 11. The ulama used the hadith of ZAYNAB BINT JAHSH to say Allah is above the 7 heavens and not everywhere. That's lesson number 11. The ulama used the hadith to say Allah is above the 7 heavens and not everywhere. The hadith of ZAYNAB BINT JAHSH, when she boasted and said, my marriage took place from above the 7 heavens. The ulama, 7 heavens and not everywhere. Number 12, we should fear Allah alone and not the blame of the blamers. We should fear Allah alone and not the blame of the blamers. This means in life, when you're going to do something, if it's halal, you do it and you don't give a damn what people say. In life, if you're going to do something, as long as it's halal, you do it and you don't give a damn what people say. When I was living in the UK, there's a 50-year-old widow, and I said, why don't you get married? I can find your brother. She said, oh, Shaykh Faisal, I would like to get married, but I'm afraid of what people will say. She was from India. This widow said, I would like to get married, but I'm afraid what people might say. She wanted a husband, but she refused to marry because in her Indian community, to marry because it is halal for him, because the adopted son is not the biological son. The Prophet didn't want to marry her because the Prophet was afraid of a scandal. But according to what Allah is saying, and somebody gave me a 2. And Mike can hear me. Under Mustafa Florida. I'm not finished picking out the lessons from the story of Zaynab bin Jahsh and the Prophet ﷺ. Also, if you fall in love with your cousin, you can marry your cousin and you don't give a damn what people say because it's halal. If you fall in love with your cousin, you can marry your cousin and you don't give a damn what people say. Why? It is halal. A believer doesn't fear the blame of the blamers. That's one of the characteristics of a real Muslim. You don't fear the blame of the blamers. It's your life. It's your life. The hujjah is Ma'idah 54, isn't that so? يا الذين آمنوا من يرتد منكم عن دينه فسوف يأتي الله بقوم يحبهم ويحبونه أذلة على المسلمين وعزة على الكافرين يجاهدون في سبيل الله ولا يخافون لومة لائم ذلك فضل الله يؤتي من يشاء. Do you remember the ayah, Ma'idah 54? That's the favorite ayah of many Muslims. يا الذين آمنوا من يرتد منكم عن دينه فسوف يأتي الله بقوم يحبهم ويحبونه أذلة على المؤمنين عزة على الكافرين يجاهدون في سبيل الله ولا يخافون لومة لائم ذلك فضل الله يؤتي من يشاء والله واسع عليم. Who you believe, whosoever from among you turn back from his religion as an apostate, Allah will bring a new people who He will love and they will love Allah, humble towards the believers and harsh towards the disbelievers, fighting in the way of Allah and never afraid of the blame of the blamers. That is the grace of Allah which He bestows on whom He wills, and Allah is the all-sufficient for His creatures' needs. He is the all-knowing. Okay, this is the ayah. The ayah is saying a believer doesn't fear the blame of the blamers. So if you fall in love with your cousin, you marry your cousin, and you don't give a damn what people say. Why? Because it's halal. And it's your life. It's halal and it's your life. The other lesson you learn from this story of ZAYNAB bint JAHSH, this wonderful story, is that divorce and khula, number 13. Divorce, khula, fasakh is a barakah from Allah. Divorce, khula, fasakh, F-A-S-K-H. Put in brackets for fasakh. Divorce, khula, fasakh, F-A-S-K-H. Put in bracket annulment is a barakah from Allah. That's the 13th lesson. Divorce, khula, fasakh is a barakah from Allah. A barakah with K. Because people don't always turn out to be what they are. A person can be wolf in sheep clothing. So divorce is a barakah. Secondly, it's possible for two people can be wolf in sheep clothing, so divorce is a barakah for in this case. Secondly, sometimes two practicing Muslims are not compatible, like the case of Zayd and Zaynab. Sometimes two practicing Muslims are not compatible, like Zayd and Zaynab. So in their case, divorce was a barakah. Sometimes the husband is deadbeat and the wife can't cope. Deadbeat means no money and no ambition and no profession. Sometimes the husband is deadbeat and the wife can't cope. Deadbeat means no money, no profession, no ambition. Sometimes the husband is impotent. Sometimes the husband is violent. Sometimes the husband is violent, sometimes he's impotent. Sometimes the husband has an addiction. Sometimes the husband has an addiction. All these are reasons to prove to you that divorce can be a barakah. Sometimes the husband is an apostate or a munafiq. Sometimes the husband turns out to be an apostate and a munafiq. Sometimes the husband turns out to be an undercover kafir. Sometimes the husband turns out to be an undercover kafir. Sometimes the husband turns out to be an undercover kafir. Sometimes the husband is a zindiq. Zin, Z-I-N. D-E-Q. Sometimes the husband turns out to be a zindiq. I put in bracket for zindiq, heretic. All these are reasons why divorce is a barakah. As for the hadith, the worst halal is divorce. That hadith is weak. It's quoted a lot, but it's weak. As for the hadith, the worst halal is divorce. That's a weak hadith. The worst halal is divorce. A famous hadith, I think it is collected by Abu Dawood, but it's a weak hadith. My sheikhs told me it's weak. And my sheikh had a PhD in hadith. As for the hadith, marry and don't get divorced, because every time you divorce, the throne of Allah shakes. That hadith is fabricated. As for the hadith, marry and don't get divorced, because every time you divorce, the arsh of Allah shakes that hadith is fabricated. It's only the ignoramus who quote this hadith. It's only an ignoramus who quote this hadith. I think this is found in Ibn Adi. Every time a divorce takes place, the throne of Allah shakes. This is a fabricated hadith, and it's only the ignoramus who quote such a hadith. The Prophet did not force men to love women or force women to love men. The hadith of Thabit bin Qais. The hadith of Thabit bin Qais. When she said, I don't find any fault in my husband, but I don't love my husband, the Prophet said, take back your garden and give her one divorce. Aqbil al-hadika wa tutalliqaha tatliqa. The hadith of Thabit bin Qais. His wife said to the Prophet, I find no fault in my husband in regards to his character or his religion, but I hate kufr. I have no chemistry for my husband. Chemistry means physical attraction. What the Prophet said, Aqbil al-hadika wa tutalliqaha tatliqa. Take back your garden and give her one divorce. So you shouldn't force a marriage if there is no chemistry. This marriage lacked chemistry. It is insanity to marry without chemistry. No one should marry without chemistry. So when you are going to get married, you need physical compatibility, spiritual compatibility, cultural compatibility, intellectual compatibility. You need to marry on your status, intellectual status. Someone with your acumen. Thabit bin Qais, where's the hadith? The hadith about khula. Aqbil al-hadika wa tutalliqaha tatliqa. The hadith about khula. The hadith about the garden. I don't blame Thabit for any defects in his character or his deen, but I hate kufr. The scholars say when they explained this hadith to me in university, I asked them what was the problem. They said there was no chemistry. The problem in this marriage, there was no chemistry. The sheikhs did not use the word chemistry. I'm using the word chemistry. The sheikh said she wasn't attracted to him. She wasn't attracted to him. They didn't use the word chemistry. I'm using the word chemistry. They said to me she wasn't attracted to him. You are not supposed to marry without chemistry. Do you remember the hadith of Mughith? Mughith was a slave, his wife was a slave, and Aisha paid money to set his wife free. According to Sharia law, she can move on because she's free. And he was walking behind his wife and he was crying with tears in his beard, begging her not to leave. The Prophet said to his uncle, aren't you surprised how Mughith loved Barira and how Barira hated her husband? The Prophet interceded for Mughith and she said, are you commanding me to stay with him? The Prophet said, no, I'm only interceding on his behalf. She said, I have no need of him. Why she moved on? Because women don't like to marry beneath their status. That's why she moved on. When I learned this hadith in university, I almost cried because I felt it for the Sahaba Mughith. Now, Ibn Abbas did not mention his race, but I'm going to tell you his race. He was a black man, Mughith. Ibn Abbas did not tell you his race, but I'm going to tell his race. He was a black man. Mughith was black. He was walking behind his wife on the streets of Medina, crying with tears in his beard, begging her to stay, and she decided to move on because she's no longer a slave. According to Sharia law, if you are not a slave, you can move on from your partner who is a slave. Many of you will say, why did the Prophet allow a man to walk behind a sister? Many of you will say that. Why did the Prophet allow a man to walk behind a sister on the streets of Medina? The answer to the question, because they had a history. That's the answer to the question. Because they had a history between them. She didn't have to move on. She could have stayed, but she chose to move on. Okay, you're going to say she didn't have to move on from Mughith, but she chose to move on. The other lesson we learned from the story of ZAYNAB bint JAHSH. The other lesson, what is the other lesson we learned from the story with ZAYNAB bint JAHSH and Zayd? Lesson number 14 is Allah did not command the Prophet anything which is inappropriate. And this is found Surah 33 verse 38. Surah 33 verse 38. Surah 33 verse 38. Allah did not command the Prophet anything which was inappropriate. Neither did Allah command Muhammad anything which was inappropriate, or any previous prophets who came before Muhammad. There is no blame on the Prophet in that which Allah has made legal for him. That has been Allah's way with those who have passed away of the previous prophets. And Allah's commandment, the decree, is determined. At no time did Allah command Muhammad to do anything which was inappropriate. If you're a believer, this is your creed. Allah did not allow anything which was inappropriate or which is inappropriate. If you're a believer, that's your creed. If you're a munafiq, then you will think what the Prophet did was inappropriate. If you're a kafir or a munafiq or apostate, you will think the marriage with the Prophet and ZAYNAB bint JAHSH was inappropriate. If you're a munafiq. But if you're a believer, you have no resentment in your heart towards this marriage. So you need to ask yourself the question, are you a munafiq or a believer? Only the munafiq, the hypocrite, and the apostate and the kafir find the marriage with the Prophet and ZAYNAB inappropriate. A true believer has no resentment towards this marriage or any doubt in his heart towards this marriage. The other question, the other lesson you learn is lesson number 15. The Prophet had deep insight and foresight. He did not want to marry ZAYNAB bint JAHSH because he knew mouths will fly. People will use the marriage to attack his character. And today, exactly like the Prophet predicted it, the Orientalists are using this marriage to attack his character. Why the Prophet could see it coming? Because the Prophet had deep insight and foresight. Exactly like the Prophet predicted it, the infidels are using the Orientalists, yes, they are using this marriage to attack the Prophet. Even though he didn't want to marry her, Allah commanded it. Why the Prophet could see it coming? Why? Because the Prophet was wise, and the Prophet was blessed with deep insight and foresight. But Allah told the Prophet not to fear the blame of the blamer in Surah 33 verse 39. Even though the Prophet was accurate with his prediction, they are going to use the marriage to excoriate him. This is a new English word for you. Okay, that's a new English word for you. Excoriate. To criticize severely. The Prophet could see it coming. My enemies, the enemies of Islam, will use this marriage to excoriate me, to criticize me, to slander my name. But Allah told the Prophet not to fear the blame of the blamer in Surah 33 verse 39. Verse 39. In the following ayah, the Prophet knew the enemies of Islam will use this marriage to excoriate him. Excoriate means to criticize severely. Okay, I'm stopping. These are the 15 lessons. I'm going to stop here and take 5 questions about the tafsir you have just heard. Tafsir Surah Ahzab, the marriage of the Prophet to ZAYNAB bint JAHSH. Please send your questions to the admins. I'm taking 5 questions about the tafsir I've just heard. Assalamu alaikum. I'm taking 5 questions. Where are the questions? Bismillah. Can a female get married without a wali if she has none? This is the Abu Hanifa madhab. Abu Hanifa allow a woman to get married without a wali, because Abu Hanifa, his opinion is, if she's allowed to spend her money without interference, she can get married without a wali. Abu Hanifa believes it's only a slave girl who needs a wali, not a free woman. It's a slave girl who needs a wali, not a free woman. If a woman should act upon the opinion of Abu Hanifa, her marriage is hanging in the balance. She has to get a scholar to examine her husband. If he turns out to be good in character and aqidah, her marriage is accepted. If the man she got married to turns out to be bad in aqidah, like he's a Barelwi, a Shia, or a Qadiani, then the marriage has to be annulled. So whenever a woman gets married without a wali, her marriage is hanging in the balance. A scholar has to examine her husband, and if he turns out to be good in aqidah and character, the marriage is accepted. If he turns out to be bad in aqidah and character, the marriage will have to be annulled. Her marriage hangs in the balance. If she gets married without a wali, her marriage hangs in the balance. A scholar has to examine her husband, and if he turns out to be good in character and aqidah, the marriage is accepted. If he turns out to be bad in aqidah and character, the marriage is rejected. If the husband turns out to be good in aqidah and character, the marriage is accepted. If the husband turns out to be evil in, if not, the marriage is rejected. Okay, thank you. Whenever a woman has no wali, the imam becomes her wali. The Prophet said the imam is the wali of the girl who has no wali. So the girl who's a revert will have to appoint her own wali. A revert with no wali has to appoint a wali. If a woman is a revert with no wali, she has to appoint a wali who will look after her interest. The purpose of the wali is to look after her interest. If the girl has a wali, who is suitable, and she went against her wali, her marriage is not accepted. It's batil. The only time a girl can go against her wali unless he is a kafir or a munafiq or a zindiq. The only time a girl can go against her wali and appoint her own wali is if the wali is a kafir or a munafiq or a zindiq. If the wali is not a zindiq, not a kafir, and she went against the wali, the marriage is batil. A zindiq, a munafiq, or a munafiq. Munafiq is Q, because Allah said, Allah, and never will Allah grant to the disbelievers a way to triumph over the believers. Surah 4, 141. It's a long ayah. Just bring me. And never will Allah grant to the disbelievers a way to triumph over the believers. This means the wali has to be Muslim. And never will Allah. This means the wali has to be Muslim. And never will Allah grant to the disbelievers a way to triumph over the believers. This is the ayah used by the scholars to say the wali has to be Muslim. This is the ayah used by the scholars to say the wali should be Muslim. The next question, where's the next question? This means the wali has to be Muslim, and never will Allah grant to the disbelievers a way to triumph over the believers. وَلَنْ يَجْعَلَ اللَّهُ لِلْكَافِرِينَ عَلَى الْمُؤْمِنِينَ سَبِيلًا. What is the best way to learn Arabic and what are the benefits? The best way to learn Arabic is to migrate to an Arabic country and mix with the Arabs and stay away from English speaking people. That's how I learned Arabic. When I was in Saudi Arabia, most of my friends were Saudis. I used to live in their homes. It caused a lot of jealousy, but I didn't go to Saudi to mix with English speaking people. I went to mix with Arabs. Go to an Arabic country and mix with the people, live with the people, and mix with those who are educated. Not the Jahil Arab, the educated Arab. If you are in a non-Arabic country, then you have to find a good Arabic teacher. There is a lot of Arabic on YouTube. I've seen friends who go to YouTube and become fluent in Arabic. But they use it for the wrong reasons. To chat up Arab girls. They became fluent for the wrong reasons. They went to YouTube and became fluent. There are people on YouTube teaching Arabic for free. Have a link. Maysoon Arabic or Maysur Arabic. Can somebody go to YouTube and find the link? Maysur Arabic. Post the link in the room. People go to YouTube and become fluent in Arabic. I've seen it. Allah is my witness. Because there are people on YouTube teaching Arabic for free. But when you are living in a non-Arabic speaking country like the West, you have to find a person to practice your Arabic with. Practice make perfect. If you don't use it, you're going to lose it. Somebody asked the question, why didn't Aisha free both? Why did she free the woman, not the man? It's a valid question, but I don't know the answer to that. Why Aisha didn't? Aisha set Mughith's wife free and not him, or both. What's the reason for it? Barira was a servant of Aisha, and Aisha decided to set her free. Because Aisha did not believe in slavery. So she set her free. Aisha did not believe in slavery. Okay, this is the link, Maysur Arabic on YouTube. Coming to you from Medina. I have friends who went there and became fluent in Arabic. If you are sincere, if you are dedicated, you can learn Arabic. Kuffar, many kuffar speak Arabic. I've seen many kuffar speak Arabic and they show off with their Arabic. And you're a Muslim and you can't speak Arabic. That's not acceptable. Aisha didn't believe in slavery. That's why she set her free. Barira was a slave of Aisha and Aisha set her free because Aisha didn't believe in slavery. Why Aisha didn't set Mughith free? Mughith was not a slave of Aisha for her to set. It's not in her place to set him free. Mughith was not a slave of Aisha. Barira was a slave of Aisha, not Mughith. So for Mughith to be set free, his master had to set him free. The story of Mughith and Barira, I almost cried in university when I was told the story. Because he was walking behind her, crying with his beard, with tears, for her to take him back, and she decided to move on. Why she decided to move on? Because she's now a free woman. She's not a slave anymore. And no woman likes to marry beneath her status. No woman. A woman likes to know that she married within her status, not beneath her status. I'm taking 5 questions. Where are the others? I heard a hadith where it says she tried to get back with Mughith and he didn't accept her. I don't know if that part of the hadith is saheeh. Because the hadith we quote in Bukhari didn't say that. Bukhari didn't say that. And it's mostly the goofy Sufis who say that. The goofy Sufis, when they quote the story, when they taught the story, they say in their story, Barira tried to get back with Mughith and he didn't accept her. He rejected her. The goofy Sufis say that. I don't know if that part of the hadith is sahih because I didn't read that in Bukhari. Why is chemistry important in a marriage? Chemistry is more important for men for the sake of erection. chemistry is more important for men for the sake of erection. In Surah Nisa verse 3, in Surah Nisa verse 3, Allah said, فَانْكِحُوا مَا تَابَ لَكُم مِّنَ النِّسَاءِ, marry women who are pleasing to you. Allah is talking about chemistry here. Women of your choice. Marry the woman who tickle your fancy. Surah Nisa verse 3, marry women who are pleasing to you. It's a long ayah. Is that Surah Nisa verse 3? Marry other women of your choice, 2, 3, or 4. The Prophet said, before you marry a girl, look at her. Because, why did the Prophet say look at her? Because chemistry is important. The Prophet said, before you marry a girl, look at her. Why did the Prophet say look at her? Chemistry is very important. Chemistry is important for the sake of erection. When the Prophet said to Mughira ibn Shu'bah, look at her, because when you look at her, it will make the love grow for one another. The Prophet is talking about chemistry. The Prophet is talking about chemistry in the above hadith. The Prophet is talking about chemistry in the above hadith. You shouldn't marry without chemistry. I'm taking 5 questions. Where are the others? Urfi marriage is a marriage which is accepted by the custom of the people. The word urf means custom. The Arabic word urf means custom. So any marriage which is accepted by the prevailing custom of the people is considered an urfi marriage. For example, in Egypt, there's a marriage called the urfi marriage. They marry without announcing it. It's called a secret marriage. Secret marriage is not haram. Secret marriage is a type of urfi marriage. The secret marriage is not haram, it's makruh. Ahmad Shakir, the great scholar who lived in the 1950s, a marriage without an announcement is a type of secret marriage. A secret marriage is not haram, it's makruh. A secret marriage is not haram, it's makruh. Ahmad Shakir, the great scholar of Egypt, had 2 wives, and the first wife didn't know about the second wife until after he died. Ahmad Shakir, the great scholar of Egypt, had 2 wives, and the first wife did not know about the second wife until after he died, and no scholar criticized Ahmad Shakir for what he did. And no scholar criticized Ahmad Shakir for what he did. Did I answer all your questions? Can I close the doors? Is temporary marriage haram? And according to the 4 Imams, temporary marriage is haram. But according to the Ja'fari madhab, the Shiites, temporary marriage is permissible. According to the Ja'fari, the Rafida madhab. According to the Rafida madhab, temporary marriage is permissible. They claim that it was Omar who made it haram because somebody did muta with his daughter and his pride was hurt. The Shiites claim and his pride was hurt. The Hanbali madhab allows a type of temporary marriage. The Hanbalis believe that if a man is away from his family, away from his wife, for studies or for trade, for business, for jihad, and he's in a strange land, he can marry a girl for 6 months or a year. In his heart, he only wants her for 6 months or a year or 2 years, but he did not tell her. He kept it as a secret in his heart. The Hanbalis allow this because they say it's better than to do zina. Why it's not temporary marriage? Because he did not stipulate in a contract that after 6 months or 1 year the marriage is void. He didn't stipulate that. He kept it as a secret in his heart. So the Hanbalis allow a type of temporary marriage, and that is a man is on a journey for business or for jihad or for studies, and he's away from his country and he has needs. He's allowed to marry a woman for 6 months, for 1 year or 2 years, whatever the case may be. But in his heart, he did not tell her he only gonna marry her for 1 year. He kept it as a secret in his heart. The Hanbalis allow this type of marriage. They say it's not muta, it's not temporary marriage, because he did not put it in writing in a contract. He kept it as a secret in his heart. You have to say what marriage the Hanbalis allow. Because the Hanbalis didn't allow muta. The Hanbalis say if a man is on a journey for jihad or for trading or for studies, he's away from his family and he has needs, he can marry a girl for 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, whatever the case may be, and he keeps it in his heart as a secret that he only wants her for 1 year. They say it's not muta because he did not stipulate it in a contract. So because he didn't put it in writing in a contract, it's not muta, because he kept it only in his heart as a secret for 1 year or 6 months or 3 months. Because he didn't put it in writing in a contract, it's not muta. It's only muta when it is put in writing in a contract. Then it is muta and then it is haram. Now, who passed the fatwa? Shaykh bin Baz. It is not muta because he didn't put it in a contract, in writing. I think I've answered your questions. If it were put in writing as a contract, it will be haram because then it becomes muta. There's a place in Pakistan called Hira Mandi. You have a lot of women there, and men marry them for 1 hour. And the Pakistani government can't close down these brothels because the girls there are Shia and they get married for 1 hour. The Pakistani government is powerless to close down these brothels because the girls in these brothels, they get married for 1 hour. And they say it's our religion, it's our fiqh, we can get married for 1 hour. Hiramandi means the diamond market. So these girls are diamonds. The diamonds market. Hiramandi. The women who work in this market, they are Shiites. They marry their clients for 1 hour, and the Pakistani government can't close them down because they say in our fiqh we can marry for 1 hour. If a person gets married in muta, you're not allowed to kill him as an adulterer. He can be punished otherwise, but not death. He can be punished otherwise. The punishment is called ta'zir. The punishment is called ta'zir. But you can't kill him because he acted upon an opinion. You can't kill him because he acted upon an opinion. Ta'zir is 10 lashes. Ta'zir means 10 lashes. I think I've answered all your questions. I'd like to thank Authentic 19 for the notes. I'd like to thank Authentic 12 for helping with the dance. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. I'll now yield the mic.